At 9:41 a.m. South China Sea. On the bridge of a lone Philippine patrol ship, the ocean is deceptively calm, but the radar tells a different story. A single aggressive contact is closing fast, its intent unmistakable. But what began as a routine patrol would end in a collision China would rather have hidden. At 9:43, the air cracks with the sound of high-pressure water cannons. The BRP Suluan, a 44-meter Philippine patrol vessel, carves a hard turn to starboard, dodging a torrent of water fired from the CCG 5403. This is Chinese gray zone warfare up close. The 4,000-ton China Coast Guard cutter is a purpose-built bully, its reinforced bow and immense size designed for one thing: intimidation. On the deck of the Suluan, Filipino sailors hold their ground, spray lashing their faces. Their mission is to resupply their nation's fishermen, an act of sovereignty in contested waters. But what they didn't see was a much greater threat approaching from another angle. To understand the chaos of that morning, you must understand the prize, the South China Sea. This is not just water, it is the world's economic jugular. Annually, $3.4 trillion in trade, a full third of global commerce, sails these lanes. Beneath the seabed lie an estimated 11 billion barrels of oil and 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. This is why Beijing makes its stand here. Its claim is the infamous 9-dash line, a sweeping boundary covering nearly 90% of the sea, which was declared legally invalid by an international tribunal at The Hague in 2016. Beijing's response was to ignore the ruling and build a chain of man-made islands on submerged reefs, turning fragile ecosystems into unsinkable fortresses with runways, hangars for fighter jets, and anti-ship cruise missiles. To enforce its will, China uses a two-fisted punch. The first is the White Hull Coast Guard, massive ships that harass and blockade vessels from neighboring countries. The second, held in reserve, is the Gray Hull PLA Navy, a looming threat of lethal escalation. This layered approach creates an intensely crowded and volatile environment, and in such a fragile balance, one mistake is enough to bring the whole system crashing down. At 9:44, the chase continues. On the bridge of the CCG 5403, every crew member is locked on the BRP Suluan. Their focus is absolute, a fatal case of tunnel vision. They never check their flank. Suddenly, a new contact flashes on the radar screen. It's moving fast, over 25 knots, its profile sharp and undeniably military. The immediate assumption is that it's American. But the IFF Identify Friend or Foe system tells an impossible story. The hull number is 164. The vessel is the CNS Guilin, a Type 052D Luoyang 3 class destroyer. This is no foreign adversary, it's one of the crown jewels of the Chinese Navy. A 7,500-ton war machine, the Guilin is packed with 64 vertical launch missile cells and the formidable Dragon Eye radar, designed to hunt and kill the most advanced enemy warships on the planet. It is on a direct, non-negotiable course that will intercept the cutter's own path. The course was set. There was no way out. At 9:45, 30 seconds to impact. On the bridge of the CCG 5403, the facade of controlled aggression evaporates into raw panic. The laws of physics are absolute. The 4,000-ton cutter is a freight train with no brakes. A hard evasive turn at this speed would risk capsizing the vessel. The captain screams into the radio, hailing the CNS Guilin on a dedicated frequency. His voice cracks. The only response is the cold hiss of static. This catastrophic breakdown in communication stems from the destroyer's fatal combination of arrogance and tunnel vision. On the bridge of the Guilin, every operator is laser-focused on the Filipino ship, and the frantic hails from their sister ship are dismissed as incompetence from a lesser service. The destroyer's captain makes a deadly assumption that the Coast Guard cutter will see his superior warship and give way, as is expected in the rigid hierarchy of China's maritime forces. It is a miscalculation of epic proportions. At 9:45, the CNS Guilin is no longer a ship on the horizon. It fills the entire viewport of the cutter's bridge, a moving mountain of gray steel. Its bow wave is now a deep, menacing roar. In a final, futile gesture, the cutter's captain orders engines to full reverse. The massive vessel shudders, but its momentum is unforgiving. The gap disappears. On the BRP Suluan, the Filipino crew watches in stunned disbelief, their own peril forgotten as they witness the impossible. 15 seconds left. No more orders. Only the impact to come. At 9:46, The collision is a multi-stage symphony of destruction. It begins with a high-pitched metallic scream as the Guilin's hardened bow first makes contact, tearing at the thinner steel of the Coast Guard cutter. This is immediately followed by a deafening, low-frequency boom, a sound felt as much as it is heard, a visceral concussion that radiates through the hulls, the water, and the very air itself. The thousands of tons of kinetic energy from the 7,500-ton destroyer, moving at over 20 knots, is unleashed in a matter of seconds. Its sharp, reinforced prow, designed to withstand combat, plunges deep into the cutter's flank just aft of the bridge, striking the vessel's superstructure and engineering spaces with unforgiving force. On the bridge of the CCG 5403, the world dissolves into pure chaos. The deck lurches sideways with impossible violence, throwing the crew from their feet. The captain, who had been frozen in disbelief, is slammed against a chart table, the air driven from his lungs. Consoles explode in showers of sparks as the ship's power grid suffers a catastrophic failure. The main lighting cuts out, plunging the bridge into a terrifying darkness punctuated only by the strobing red of emergency alarms and the frantic beams of flashlights. The metallic tang of ozone and the acrid smell of burning insulation floods the space, mixing with dust and pulverized debris. The shriek of the collision alarm is now joined by the deeper whoop of the hull breach and fire suppression warnings, a chorus signaling the vessel's critical state. From the deck of the BRP Suluan, the Filipino sailors watch the horrifying spectacle unfold. The initial impact is followed by a brutal, grinding pirouette. The cutter, its momentum violently arrested and redirected, swings its stern around, causing a secondary collision as its fantail smashes into the side of the destroyer. This second impact is a crushing blow, pulverizing lifeboats, snapping off radar masts, and further entangling the two ships in a deadly embrace. They see a gaping wound torn open on the cutter, exposing the interior of what was once a conference room. Wrecked furniture, severed pipes, and dangling wires are visible through the smoke, a grim diorama of the destruction. Black, oily smoke begins to billow from this gash and from the cutter's mangled engine exhausts. The two ships, once proud symbols of a superpower's might, are now locked together, a single, crippled, and smoldering monument to arrogance and miscalculation, drifting helplessly in the very waters they sought to control. In a single instant, a show of force became an international display of failure. The violent crescendo of the collision fades, replaced by an unnerving and profound silence. The only sounds that remain are the ones that underscore the disaster: the sinister crackle of onboard fires, the hiss of steam escaping from ruptured pipes, and the faint, panicked shouts of men echoing across the water. The two colossal Chinese ships are locked in a grotesque tangle of steel, drifting aimlessly as a single, helpless entity. A thick column of black smoke coils lazily into the otherwise pristine sky, a stark funeral pyre marking the coordinates of the incident. A growing, iridescent sheen of diesel fuel spreads from the cutter, which now lists heavily to port, a clear sign that it is taking on water and in imminent danger of sinking. A debris field of splintered wood, floating equipment, and other wreckage expands slowly around them. Aboard the BRP Suluan, Captain Reyes moves with practiced calm. His first responsibility is the safety of his own crew, but his second, equally critical duty is to bear witness. His training under international maritime law is ingrained. He is an officer on the scene of a major maritime incident. He orders his crew to continue documenting everything with a methodical precision, high-resolution video from multiple angles, time-stamped photographs of the damage, and a detailed log of every observation. He then steps to the communications console and keys the microphone for the International Maritime Emergency Channel. His voice is firm, professional, and devoid of emotion, cutting through the quiet chaos. All stations, this is Philippine Patrol Vessel BRP Suluan. We are witness to a collision at coordinates involving Chinese Coast Guard Vessel 5403 and Chinese Naval Destroyer 164. Both vessels appear disabled and have sustained heavy damage. We are standing by to render assistance. The transmission is recorded. The offer of aid and the factual report is now part of the official, undeniable record. High above, at an altitude of 30,000 feet, the crew of a U.S. Navy P-8A Poseidon had observed the entire sequence. They were not passive spectators. The tactical coordinator had immediately directed all sensors onto the unfolding drama. The plane's ANAPY-10 surface search radar mapped the collision in real time, while its MX-20 HD electro-optical turret zoomed in, capturing crystal-clear video of the impact and the ignored radio calls from the cutter. The aircraft's advanced electronic signals intelligence suite didn't just hear the hails. It verified the specific, encrypted plan frequencies being used, proving the destroyer had every opportunity to respond. This was not just a video. It was a comprehensive, multi-layered data package of imagery, communications, and telemetry. Irrefutable proof of catastrophic negligence. This data was already being streamed via a secure satellite link to analysts at U.S. Indo-Pacific Command in Hawaii. But before Beijing could craft a narrative or issue a denial, the whole world already knew what had really happened. The collision near Scarborough Shoal was not an accident. It was an outcome, one cultivated by a military doctrine that rewards aggression over prudence and fosters intense inter-service rivalry. In a system where the Navy and Coast Guard compete for prestige rather than cooperate, and where captains are promoted for boldness, the guardrails of caution are dangerously eroded. This billion-dollar blunder, therefore, exposed more than a flaw in command. It revealed a deep cultural vulnerability. It proved that the greatest threat to China's modern Navy is not an external adversary, but the corrosive hubris growing within itself, leading to a catastrophic and entirely unforced error. The incident serves as a stark, globally televised lesson. True maritime strength is not measured simply by the number of hulls a nation can launch, but by the cohesion of the force that crews them. It stands in direct contrast to the culture of unwavering professionalism, forged through relentless joint training where mistakes are identified and corrected. This is a culture where procedure and safety, not rank and ego, determine action. The event broadcast a critical piece of intelligence to every nation in the Pacific. China's massive fleet, while visually impressive, may lack the resilience of a truly integrated force. The sea is an unforgiving environment that has little regard for national ambition. It rewards only competence and punishes arrogance without mercy. True power isn't forged in a shipyard, it's forged in the discipline of its crew.